If you've ever thought to yourself, I could use a lot more accountability and community in my business and life, you are not alone. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Dennah Renee, who makes the topic that seems kind of overwhelming really approachable. And she's going to tell you all about how to take responsibility and ownership for making community and accountability happen in your business. I am so excited for you to listen to this episode. There are so many amazing takeaways. And on a personal note, I'm very excited because at the time this episode goes live, we are opening the doors to my first membership community, the Educators Lounge. So if you are a creative educator who is seeking out that community, accountability, and more, I would encourage you to go learn more about it at layleemadi.com/Educators Lounge. I am so excited about this new offer. I've never created anything like this in my business before, and I am so thrilled to see where it goes. I just cannot wait to be in community with such amazing educators and entrepreneurs like you. I know you're going to love this episode with Dennah Renee, so let's get into it. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. Today, I am really excited because we are being joined by Dennah Renee. Now, Dennah is a business coach, brand photographer, and founder of the Quarter Co. And she is such a cheerleader for her people. She is there to love and shove you to the next level, which I freaking love that. Like, what great copy. I'm obsessed. And I think the best part and the most exciting reason that I have Dennah on here is because her strategy is to help your business grow. And she does that through two things, community and accountability. And so we're going to be talking all about quarterly planning. We're going to be talking about community. We're going to be talking about accountability, all the things. And first and foremost, I just want to say welcome, Dennah. And I would love to hear a little bit about your journey and how these things have become so important to you.
Oh, Laylee, I am so grateful to be here. Yes, I am Dennah Renee. I have been a photographer for, oh my goodness, 11 years now. I started out in the wedding industry, loved it. It was amazing. But I remember getting to a season in business where, you're shooting weddings full time, busy every weekend. And I remember being surrounded by incredible vendors. You just love the community behind the scenes. They're your business besties. But I remember people talking about the fact that they were like staying up till 2 a.m. editing, working on the back end of their business. And then they were back up at 6 or 7 to go take care of their kids. And they were just like running on empty. And I remember just being like overwhelmed and thinking there has to be another way. And I then remember meeting other business owners who were thriving and they had work-life boundaries and they were taking vacations and they were like being financially successful. And I was like, that's what I want. Like, that is the kind of business that I want to have. And it came to this time where I was like, okay, this isn't going to happen on accident. We're going to have to work to build something like that. And so I started researching, asking all the questions, getting mentors, getting coaches, and learning what it took to build and what it will take to build a business that supports a life that I love. That I'm not going to be a slave to my business, but my business is going to be a blessing to my family, to my clients, to my customers, and to my friends. And so that over a period of time, I was working really hard. And through that, I transitioned into brand photography because I love the heart and hustle that it takes to run a business. I love the strategy that comes behind brand photography itself. And through that, I realized that I love the heart and hustle it takes to grow a business. And I wanted to help other businesses be able to grow and create the same thing and get freedom in their business.
I love that. Like, what a beautiful mission to have, not only for yourself and your family, but for the people around you. And I see you doing that. And I feel like I'm honestly like late to the game in becoming friends with you. I feel like we clicked immediately. And I was like, okay, she's one of my people. We are very aligned in a lot of the things that we're working toward. And I love that so much. So I'd love to hear about how you approach these topics and how you make them, I guess, like your own, because I feel like you do things a little bit differently. And especially when it comes to like what I've seen you share about Quarter Co and how you approach planning and how you approach all of the strategy that you implement in your business.
Well, so with the Cortico itself, it was actually founded back in 2021. I remember sitting in a studio. My husband was being an absolute sweetheart and he came along to take some headshots of me. And he was like, you just seem like a little restless, a little unsettled. He's like, what's going on? And I was like, I want a community of people who are like-minded that want to build businesses like this. It's kind of like Seth Godin says in like This Is Marketing. He says, people like us, we do things like this. And I was like, I wanted something like that. And he was like, then make it. And I was like, oh, well, there's a wonderful idea. Okay, sir. He's very logical, which I appreciate because I am not always. And so I did not have a lot of strategy that went behind this. I literally put out a call on Instagram. I was like, guys, this is my heart. This is what I want to do. It's going to be starting next month in December in my living room. If you want to come be a part of it, like, let's go. I'm not going to pretend that I have it figured out, but we're going to figure it out together. And that was actually the start of the Cortico in fall of 2021. I'm a little bit nerdy, and so I spend a lot of time like researching and reading and getting as much information as possible because if I'm going to do something, I want to do it with excellence. And so I did things like I became a certified Business Made Simple coach for a season because I was like, I don't want to be someone who's just saying like, follow me, I have good ideas. I want to make sure that I have good strategies and frameworks behind the things that I'm teaching. And so there was trial and error along the way, but it became a refining process of, okay, how can we do this? And then how can we prove on it with each iteration?
Now, I think that is something so admirable, honestly, and something that a lot of educators, and if my listeners who have been here for a while have heard me say this a million times, but I think that it's the educators who are continually trying to grow their knowledge and grow their expertise and create new iterations to their offerings, whether it be a service or a product. Like that is what sets them apart. And so I love that you did that. I love that you nerded out. Like you should be nerding out about what it is that you are bringing to people. And I do also love that you just started. Like, I love that you didn't overthink. I am an overthinker. So, like, this is me calling myself out. This is not me saying, like, go us. This is me saying, go you, because I struggled so much to get started in accomplishing like these communities and these products and offerings I wanted to create because I was overthinking them. So I love that you were like, come to my living room, we're doing this. Like, what a great lesson there. So how do you approach quarterly planning?
So with quarterly planning, there's so much great information out there. And I am a huge advocate that you have to do what works best for you and your business in the season that you're in. But for me, what I like to do is I like to plan in a quarter. And we usually have a much better idea of what a season holds over 90 days over what it holds in 365. And so that allows us to make more educated decisions and be aware of what we can actually tackle. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to look at my calendar, like what is going on, what is coming up, what do I have in place? And then I like to structure things accordingly. I think there's also a freedom in planning in 90 days because there's so many things as entrepreneurs that we love to do. We're always chasing the next big idea, the big opportunity. That's who we are. That's the way that we're wired. That's why we have our own business. And sometimes it feels like there's a little bit of pressure to do all the things. And with 90 days, we get to be very honest with ourselves about what we can accomplish. When we start looking at our time freedom, the margin that we have available, when we start looking at the financial goals that we either need or want to hit, it then allows us to go, okay, I can focus on these specific areas, and then I can put these other things to rest until the next quarter or another season. It's not saying no. So we're not being tied down to say no. It gives us the freedom to say yes to what we want to focus on now, and then yes to what we want to focus on later. So there's actually more freedom in quarterly planning. For those in the room who are not planners, it's okay. This is actually a fun, creative way to do it that isn't going to tie you down. But then again, for the planners like me in the room, we can get a little bit nerdy in the details of quarterly planning and have a great time there.
Okay, I think it's so important what you said about the pressure of doing that next big thing. And I used to actually, it's really funny. Well, not funny, but it makes sense why I feel so aligned with you because I used to speak all the time at conferences about burnout and scheduling for success was like my big thing. Actually, I still have a shop product called Scheduling for Success because of this exact thought that I struggled with. I want to do everything. I want to do this next idea and I want to do it now. And I still do. I mean, I'm also 11 years into business. I'm I'm in my 11th year. I'm in my 12th. I don't know. I'm a long time into business and I still am like, oh, I have this great idea. I'm going to have to do it right now. And we don't. And I think that that is not saying no, but saying yes to later was such a great point. And I just really want to like double down on that. I think that's amazing. What would you say are like when you're working with your people in Quarter Co, what would you say is like the biggest thing that you've noticed that they do that a lot of other entrepreneurs do too, that is maybe like a misstep, like something that they needed to actually work more deeply on than you may have thought in the beginning?
I think so. The Association for Financial Counseling and Planning Education says that there is a 10% chance that you are going to reach your goal if it's just like running around in your mind, right? If there's just an idea that's sitting there.
Mm.
That percentage increases to 40% simply by writing it down. That should make us all run for our planners or for our Trello boards, whatever it is that you use, right?
Literally,
Yes.
back.
Now, here's where it gets fun, Lily. Okay, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
There's a 95% chance that you will reach your goal if you have it written down, broken down to actionable steps, and then have accountability in place to help make sure that you actually reach your goals. Oh my goodness, who does not love those numbers, right? 95% chance. That means there's only a 5% chance that you will not reach your goals. So, one of the areas that I feel like I have struggled with in the past, and some of my ladies, when they're first getting into the Quarter Co, have faced, is that we write down our goals. We're like, okay, I want to reach this financial number, or I want to launch this specific thing. But then we don't always break it down into actionable steps.
Yes.
And being your own boss is hard. Like, we love as entrepreneurs doing it. Like, it is amazing. This is what we want to do. We wanted some kind of freedom, financial, time, creative. Like, we wanted that. But then there's times you get into the office and maybe you're just having a hard day, or you're overwhelmed and there's feels like there's too many things to do. And there's not someone sitting over you saying, Dennah, Laylee, this is what you need to do, right? And so overwhelm can set in. And so the reason that we want to break it down all the way into actionable steps, like the little piddly tasks that you're like, do I really need to break it down to that point? Is so when you get into the office and you're on top of the world, boo, you tackle that big giant, that mammoth of a task that is on your to-do list, right? But on the days that you're overwhelmed and life is just a little bit heavier, you can still reach for some of that almost like low-hanging fruit, those smaller, easier tasks, and you get a win, right? And that is a vote for the person that you are and the person that you want to be. You're the person that sets out what they desire to do. It's like you set out and you accomplish it. And so even on those hard days, you can reach for the small things and check, get that little dopamine hit, and honey, we are off to the races.
Oh my gosh. When you said that, check that little dopamine hit, I was like, that's me. But I mean, ADHD girl over here, I'm like, I have to have them written out. But I think one thing that I used to really struggle with, and I mean, I still do sometimes, is knowing like how minute, like how small, how to break things down. So do you have any advice around that? Like, how do you take that big picture and not just break it down like into 5 tasks, but break it down into like as many as you would recommend? Like what's your process there?
So I like to break it down pretty much into as tiny and minute as we can get. So I have like big steps are going to take you more than a day to accomplish. So these are tasks that's going to take you a little bit more, but like little steps are something that you could do in an afternoon. That's kind of that low hanging fruit that we're talking about. So for example, I'm getting ready to host a Quarter Co retreat. We're going to get all our girls, they're flying in. We're going to spend some time together. And so I took this girl, okay, this made me respect you so much for hosting the Creative Educator Conference. I'm hosting a small 3-day retreat for like 10 people. Like, it's going to be cozy, intimate, and wonderful. And the amount of logistics that go into it, oh my goodness, my respect for you. Like, I already adore you. I think you're the greatest. I love you. You're wonderful. You're brilliant. But then I was like, she does this for an entire conference for hundreds and hundreds of people with some of the greatest educators of all time in the room. Like, the pressure is on and you handle it with grace. That's a side tangent there. But I just had to say, like, oh, utmost respect. But as far as like breaking it down, like I had to break it down all the way into like, I need to go shopping for things like for snacks, right? We need nummy snacks because that is a huge part of any good retreat is delicious snacks. And so I even broke it down into what snacks that I'm going to get, because I know that if I'm getting any fresh snacks, So obviously we have our prepackaged one, but the fresh ones, I'm going to have to get those very close to the days of the retreat, or my
Yeah.
assistant is going to have to get them very close to the day of the retreat, which means my brain is probably going to be a little bit overloaded and overwhelmed because of all the moving parts coming into play. And
Yeah.
so I don't want to miss anything, because these are like requests that the ladies had, things that they wanted. And so I want to honor them, which means I'm breaking it down all the way down to a shopping list of little tasks and things that I'm going to get. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I so appreciate the example, not only because it paints a picture, but also relatable. I will give you this. It doesn't matter if your retreat is for 10 people, 5 people, or 250 people. It is not for the faint of heart. There are so many tasks that go on that task list. And I love that you gave that example. I just think it's so helpful for people to be able to hear, the thought process behind it. So that was really great. I'd love to hear too, you talk about having that retreat, and you've brought up accountability already, but I'd love to hear like your perspective on accountability and the role that it plays in planning, because I do feel, I mean, again, I feel like we are so aligned in this. As somebody I do retreats and masterminds, and although my mastermind's not open this year, but I believe so strongly as a coach that accountability is so important. And I'd love to hear your perspective on this, and how you've seen it change people and their businesses.
Well, I feel for accountability, it has to start with transparency. I kind of will say something like, I get to the right to know everything about you, and you get to the right to know everything about me. Now, that's more so on like a business level. You get to decide on that personal level how to guard your heart. But when it comes to business in the Cortico, like, we are extremely transparent, because that allows us to love and serve one another well. So it starts by saying, here are my goals. So we start with a quarterly plan. We have a plan of where we are going and what we're going to accomplish. And then I like to break it down. We have those tasks that are going to move our business forward, because we've broken it all the way down into little baby steps, right? Each week, I like to set a big 3 for the week, like things that are going to move the needle forward in my business. I take it a step further because I'm a little bit nerdy. This is kind of optional. I like to set a big 3 for the day. So like, one of my big 3 for the day today is chatting with you. Best big 3 ever. And so I like to break it down to things that are going to continue to move my business forward each day. So for me, it started out at the beginning, before I had a group like this, that I would have a buddy that I would send my big 3 to each week. And then at the, like, we usually would have like a Wednesday check-in, like, how you doing? Where are you at? And then at the end of the week, we would send, I'm an emoji kind of gal. So we would send like 3 green checks, or like 2 green checks and a red X. And you would kind of let one another know. And then there was that follow-up question or celebration. So you reached them all, like, yay, that's wonderful. If there was some red X's, then there was a conversation of like, why is there a red X this week? Not that it's bad. It's not a judgment. I would just like some context and understanding of why that happened. Like, did we misset our expectations, or did something come up? Did life happen that kind of knocked us off our feet? Or were we watching a new season of The Bachelor that came out and we probably should have been working? Like, where were we at? And we got to have a little bit more conversation around there, which allowed us to continue to make wise decisions moving forward.
Yeah, I think there's so many things you can touch on there. Like, I feel like so many people, they hear accountability, right? And they think like it has to be a coach, or it has to be all the things I listed before when I opened this question, actually. And I caught myself being like, I'm going to have to follow up this question with another one, because I do think there is a time and a place for paid accountability. I do think that, that saying, I actually used to hate this saying. So like, if you've been around for the 5 years this show's been on, you may have heard me actually talk crap about this one saying of, when people pay, they pay attention. And I'm like, well, I think you can just get as much. Listen, as somebody who's hosted many rounds of free masterminds peer to peer, they fall apart just as quickly as they get built up, right? So, but I would love to hear your opinion on like, what's the time and place for a paid investment? And if you're not there yet, or you just like don't trust that, maybe you're in a season of like, I need to guard my investments really closely. And again, I say that as an educator whose whole job is to like do this, but I do believe that there are other options. Like, what are those other options?
Oh, yes. So there is a time, a place, a season for everything. I fully agree with that. And yes, I'm an advocate for like having, like, I have mentors in my life at all times. I'm so grateful for that. But I'll give actually an example, like a personal example from this year in my own life. So This year, I went to the Creative Educator Conference. Thank you, Laylee. Loved it. Amazing. I literally have like notebooks full of notes, like a whole camera album full of like photos, like when we had different speakers that were talking so fast that you're just like trying to keep up. It was wonderful. So I loved it. And I remember sitting around the table, and I was there with several other friends, but one friend in particular is my friend Rachel Lee of Rachel Lee Photography. She's an absolute gem. Everybody needs a Rachel in their life. And we were sitting there and we were talking about the fact like we have so many ideas and so many things that we'd like to implement. It felt like we know what to do. It felt we were in a season where like, okay, I know what I need to do, but I'm having a hard time executing, right? I'm having a little bit of trouble. And so we're like, we don't necessarily need to go and have a coach tell us what to do, because I mean, we will always benefit from a coach. Let's be honest and transparent in that. But at the season, we're like, we don't necessarily need that. What we really need to do is have some discipline, some accountability, and get things done. And so we sat there and we're like, what can we do to make sure that it happens? And we decided that we were going to meet every Wednesday at 4 a.m. my time, 5 a.m. her time. It's okay. We were a little crazy. We understand that. But we're like, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? And so we were like, we cannot be here whining about our business not moving in the direction or the speed that we wanted to if we're not willing to do the work. And you had just provided so much rich, wonderful information and education at the conference that we're like, this needs to be applied. This can't just sit in our head and on our heart. Like, we need to take action on this. It's our job. Like, Laylee, as the host, you do an amazing job getting great educators there, but it's our job as attendees to make sure that we implement that information. Like, we need to take responsibility and we need to implement that. And I know that it is easy for me to get distracted in everyday life. And I think that's human nature, right? And so I was like, I need someone that's going to help hold me accountable. And so we said, we're going to do this. And not only did we say that we were going to do it, we put it on the calendar, because for most of us as business owners, if we don't put it on the calendar, it's not going to happen, right? But we also set a time period that we were going to do it. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to do this for the next 20 years. Like, oh, honey, we don't know what the next 20 years hold. We said, we're going to do this every week, barring a couple of vacations that were going to come up, now through the end of July. So girl, it is Wednesday right now at the time of this recording, and we met this morning. And so we have met every week, and we've had puffy eyes and we've had crazy things happen, but it has been so good because I can look back and I can point to many things in my business that have taken place or that have happened, or ideas that are like currently being worked on because of those 4 a.m. meetings with Rachel, where we said, if nothing changes, nothing changes, and we're going to do something about it.
Oh my God. I could cry, first of all. Like, I think it's everybody's dream when they create something for people to connect with each other and to be able to like continue it on, because that's just any community builder's dream, is that the community continues to blossom over time with or without me like physically there. So thank you for sharing that, first of all, on a selfish note. Second of all, I love what you said about taking responsibility for making that action happen. And I think that that's something I've done a few episodes on, like investments that I've made that haven't been, that they didn't meet my expectations, but how I had to take it upon myself to get my investments worth. And that there is a give and take when you're investing in something. No one's going to, even if they serve something up on a silver platter, you can't, if you're not going to take that thing and actually use it, it's still going to be unused, right? So I love that you said nothing changes if nothing changes. Like, what an incredible mantra for that. And what an amazing action step too that you've given people. Like, no matter what you come to, it doesn't have to be Creative Educator Conference. If you go to any event, any conference, a free webinar, whatever, continuing on and taking that action step is huge. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. And Laylee, I just want to also share that is not the only accountability that has come for me personally out of the Creative Educator Conference. I'm in several Voxer group chats where people are like, conference besties, and they will just pop in and they're like, co-working, who's ready for it? Or someone will say, I'm getting ready to launch something and I need some accountability. And someone else will raise their hand and say, I'm in launch. And so I agree with you. You're right. It doesn't always have to be just one place that you find community. But if there is a Facebook group, a friend group, somewhere that you feel safe to say, guys, I'm ready to move the needle forward. Like, something has to change. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And you say, I need someone who's going to love me enough to hold my feet to the fire. Who's ready to do this with me? And then, like I said, my biggest encouragement to you would be to put it on your calendar.
Yeah.
Set a day that you're going to do it. We have to be intentional because the amount of intentionality that you put into planning to make it happen is the amount of intentionality that is going to come from your time together. And so we want to make sure that we are putting it on the calendar. And then I would encourage you to take it a step further and set a period of time that you're going to do it, because it's hard to have like those long-term commitments and say, we're just going to do it for the month of August. And you do it for the month of August and commit to that and see what happens. Like, what is the fruit of the effort that you put in? I think you'll be encouraged.
I love that second step. And honestly, I've never done that. Even with my peer-to-peer masterminds, I've been like, let's just see how it goes. And we don't put an end date. And so I think I'm going to instill that into my own next efforts with our peer group and say like, hey, let's just see, because things fizzle out during the seasons, and I think that actually happened to my last group where we were like, we hit holidays and then we just kind of got busy. And so it got hard to like start it up again. So I love that tip selfishly for myself. Now I will also say, I love what you said about, I have FOMO about these Voxer chats, but I love that you created multiple wins from one effort. Like you attended something and then you made multiple things that were beneficial to your life come out of it. Like, what motivation. That's amazing. How would you say, for those of us out there who are more introverted or shy, like I always tell people when they go to something, you've got to push yourself, but do you have any tips on that if you're going to try to seek something like this out, where do people even start to do that? How do they pull themselves out of their comfort zone?
Oh, that is so hard. So I tell people that I'm a professional extrovert, but like naturally my comfort zone is like staying in the hotel room a little bit. So like late night lobby chats, I love them, but it takes like a little bit of like
Yeah.
deep breath,
It's
get
hard.
in the elevator. And once I'm in the elevator going downstairs, girl, we are good to go. We are ready because we know we're going to meet amazing people. But sometimes it's the matter of like getting out of the room. And I think that can be the case whether it is in person or online. It's scary to put yourself out there. It's vulnerable because I think oftentimes we can wrestle with the thought of, am I ahead? Like, am I on time? Am I behind? We can feel embarrassed being vulnerable about where we are in business because you can have a beautiful, thriving business from the exterior, but sometimes there may be a couple pieces of your business or elements that you're still working on and growing because, we didn't all work extremely hard to get a business degree. Sometimes we really had a craft that we loved, that we then made a business and then realized, oh, I've got to work on the business side of business. And so there's some vulnerability in being transparent and getting that accountability. And I would encourage you to start small. Maybe you're not someone that's going to go ahead and put it out on a Facebook group or even raise your hand at a conference or retreat, but maybe there's someone that you feel a little bit comfortable with, like a friend. So like for me, Rachel is a dear friend. And so I was able to be extremely raw with her and say, hey, I need to move things forward in my business at a different rate than I have been. And she was so kind. She responded in kind and said, let's go, let's do it together. And she was a very safe space for me to do that with. I know it's hard because we're not always guaranteed that that first person that we reach out to is going to be as kind. But I think oftentimes there's a little bit of that awareness. You can usually tell when there's someone that's safe. And I would encourage you, like, start small, start one-to-one if you're okay with that. I know for most of my introverted friends, they do best and are most comfortable one-to-one. So instead of saying like, I need this huge accountability group, get that one person. Start with the one.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. And I also 100% agree. And I think it's been so interesting actually, because I've been the one for so many of my friends because like I feel like introverts find each other, but I am more of like an ambivert. So I can push myself to be extroverted when I need to. And so like finding the one, you just never know what it will lead to either. So and it's just easier to do things side by side with someone else. And I think that's why I don't know. I love community so much because of this. We have learned so much this episode, Dennah. I'm like so excited for people to take this with them and to be able to apply it to their own experiences and their own lives. I'd love also, if you don't mind, before we wrap up with our unpopular opinion question, I'd love to hear about how people can work with you in the Quarter Co. Because I think as people listen to this, or at least maybe for me, I'm listening to this and being like, I need more Dennah in my life. Like, how do I get this? I feel like you're so positive, but you're going to push people. And I love that. I love that balance. And it's something I strive to do. And I love seeing it emulated in you. Like, I'm like, I need to do that. So how can people work with you?
Thank you so much, Laylee. So, yes, I host the Quarter Co. It is a small mastermind, a cohort of entrepreneurs. The majority of them are service providers, but they are people who are wonderful at their craft, but are really wanting to hone in the business side of business. And we operate by having bi weekly co working and then bi weekly trainings with amazing community chat and like weekly, like multiple checkpoints throughout the week, accountability, where we get to hold one another's feet to the fire and just really love and serve one another well. I think my favorite thing, I think I'm experiencing on a small level, what you've experienced with the Creative Educator Conference, is like when I see them collaborating together, I'm just like, oh, proud mom. I love seeing the work happening together. But yes, the Quarter Co is a 6-month program because we like to, again, set a date for it. We're intentional, and we have a start date and then an end date, and you can decide if you want to continue on or if you're like, no, I've got the skills that I need and I'm ready to go take on the world.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. We're going to make sure to link all of that information for you guys in the show notes, but I believe that while this episode goes live, your doors will be open for this next round, right? So like when do you close doors again?
August 7th.
Okay, so y'all need to hustle over there, hustle over to our show notes, or go find Dennah on where should people find you? Instagram?
Instagram, Facebook, anywhere, and it's Dennah, Dennah. We keep it nice and simple around here.
Love it. Thank you so much. Okay, so before we like peace out, what is your unpopular opinion about, it could be about community, accountability, quarterly planning, any of those things?
Oh, that's such a good one. I think that my unpopular opinion would be that community and accountability does not happen by accident. It takes work. It takes work both to find it, but then two, to get the most out of it and to be a part of it, because we have to be vulnerable, we have to be transparent, and we have to be willing to give and to receive. And for some people, it is very easy to give. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, it's very easy to give, but it can be hard to receive. It's almost like in like a mastermind group, sometimes it's harder to get, or a little bit more difficult to get into the hot seat, because you're like, I'm ready to like love and serve and help you problem solve. But sometimes it can be challenging to get in yourself. And I think it's the unpopular opinion would be that sometimes it is hard to receive as an entrepreneur.
I mean, I 100% agree with that. I feel like that's me. And that was me, at least in the first few masterminds I joined, where I was like, I feel like I'm not getting a lot out of this. And I was like, oh, because I'm not accepting the time that I purchased. Because I was just always like, okay, move on. Don't look at me. So thank you for sharing that. I love it. And I love that you said community and accountability don't happen on accident. I think it's so easy to see groups like your group, or like, you know, when I do my working retreats or I do next level, and think like, I want to be in that room. How do I get in that room? And it's like, you got to get yourself in a room. Let's do it. I love
Absolutely.
that. Thank you so much, Dennah. This was such a fun episode. And everybody make sure to go follow along with Dennah and check out her Quarter Co. And I will see you at the conference in the spring.
Oh my God, I cannot wait. It's going to be amazing.